European Commissioner for Transport, Adina Vălean. We have Marian-Jean Marinescu, who is the coordinator for the Transport Committee for the We have Petar, who is the S&D coordinator in the Transport Committee, and we have Elena Contura, who is the coordinator for the Left Group, also in the Transport Committee. And of course, you all know him. We have our the president of the ETF, from Moreels. So, why do we want to talk about work in transport? Of course, we represent workers in transport, and we believe that the future of work in transport is really interconnected with the future of the sector. And we believe that it's important to talk about workers in transport because workers in transport in the past have mainly been taken for granted. And apart from those that work in transport, around the transport sector, very few people would know how goods are supplied, how people are moved, what's behind transport, and we can see it in every transport mode. In shipping, we talk about sea blindness, so what is out of sight is also out of mind. But we also see it, for instance, in railway. Last year, we had our own campaign about the European Year of Railway Workers, we called it, and our slogan was, it takes 300 workers to move a train. So it's not just about the train driver or the train conductor or the person at the station. There are 300 people for any train that moves in Europe. And transport has changed over the last decades. We always talk about digitalization and the need for transport to change and to evolve, but transport has changed over the last decades, and so have also transport workers. But transport workers are not being considered always as important as they are, and there is a general bad public image associated to transport workers. Sometimes they've been considered as privileged. Let's think about cabin crew and pilots. Still now, some of them earn less than a worker in a supermarket or anywhere else in a normal sector. They are still considered to be privileged with all the problems that they meet and that we know. In other cases, workers, they have been associated to the delays and the inefficiencies that are certainly not caused by them. And if we think about the levels of violence to which some of the workers in airports, in stations, on trains, on buses are exposed, and this is is not at all improving at the moment. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic and everything else that happened has made transport workers visible to the works. And so finally, the world discovered that there are seafarers, truck drivers, port workers, warehouse and delivery workers that have been keeping our country during the pandemic, while the whole continent was locked down. They never stopped, and they were among the heroes that we were uploading every night at 8 o'clock from our window. But this made clear, of course, that they are key workers, and it also made clear that they are a scarce resource. Not enough people want to work in transport, and with a few exceptions, for instance, I can talk about the port sector, that is more regulated, and so working conditions are more predictable. There is a dramatic shortage problem, as we all know, in transport. Only 1 in 5 transport jobs are done by women, so only about 20%, with very high level of segregation and extremely high level of violence and harassment against women transport workers. Young workers are clearly not interested in transport. We have a demographic problem in some of our sectors especially, and we can't retain young workers in the sector. And this acute shortage has shown that to everyone that working conditions are not good. People don't want to work in transport because working conditions are not good enough. Those who have been fired during the pandemic don't want to go back to the sector. There is also a huge wave of strikes, unprecedented wave of strikes, already for a year. And this for us means two things. The first thing is that there are severe problems because, believe me, a strike is always the last resort for a union. We never take strikes lightly. They're also very costly for us. And the secondly is that there's no willingness from our counterparts, be them employers or government, in some cases public authority, to avoid conflicts and to solve those problems. And so a social dialogue is a method to address problems through negotiations, is mostly not working. And I will use again ports as an example. Ports is a sector where we see powerful, strong unions always ready to fight. This is the traditional image, at least. We see that in the port sector, we had the lowest level of strikes over the last 12 months. Everywhere else in transport, there were strikes. So why there were no strikes? Because we have strong unions and there is a good level of social dialogue, and there are problems, but are addressed by social dialogue. So I will let you draw the conclusion later in the debate. Last spring, we warned that the summer in aviation would be a disaster because we saw what happened. We saw that there was a lot of social unrest in the sector. And we believe we warn you, next summer will be the same because there are structural problems. And if the structural problems are not solved, the problem will stay there. We have European elections, as I said in the beginning. Some of you will stand again for elections, others will not. But I'm sure that the debates on electoral programs are already taking place in your parties and in your groups. And unfortunately, transport is never a central part in electoral programs. But I think it's the duty of you all, decision makers, to make sure that such crucial subject in Europe gets the relevance it deserves, and especially with a special focus on work in transport. Because labor shortage has a history and didn't come out of the blue. Labor shortage started many, many years ago, decades ago, in maritime. It's moved then to road transport, and then it moved on, as we know, in public transport and in aviation. In shipping, it started when we decided that we could leave the sector to flag states that are not the state of the owner of the ships. So when we decided that we could live with flags of convenience, outsourcing the mode of transport that carries 90% of the goods that arrive to Europe, there we signed up for a failure, and we saw what happened with the crew change crisis. It would have not happened probably, or not to this proportion, if we would have kept the ships in Europe. As I said, the shortage moved or evolved then subsequently to road transport, and this also coincides with the liberalization of the sector. But it also coincides with the fact that there are no controls and enforcement. And so no controls and enforcement of the regulation mean that we could use, or some employers could use, a very heterogeneous and big labor market where working conditions are very diverse to play with social cost. Public transport, and I think we all have to discuss about public transport because there is a lot of emphasis now on greening Europe and getting people out of their car. I will give you an example that I've already used with some of you. In Italy, our unions have signed collective bargaining agreements with Amazon, which is normally the bad employer, and their subcontractors. And you know what's happening? That people that were driving buses in cities are now moving to drive for Amazon. So people don't want to work anymore for public transport company, and they move to work for Amazon. And again, I'll let you draw your conclusion. So it is clear, we will discuss this later, public transport needs adequate public funding, because this is also leading to transport poverty. It's becoming a huge problem, also side of the problem. I don't need to talk again about shortage in aviation. We have also a lot of our friends from the aviation sector here today. It's clear, we always say that the sector is sick and it needs to be cured with a structural cure. We also have to face that there are demographic trends that are we are looking at numbers, and the number of working age Europeans is decreasing. It means that sectors are in competition with each other to get people. So sectors have to become more attractive, and working conditions have to improve. We have criticized very sharply what the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, said during the during the speech on the State of the Union in September, because she was saying there is a dramatic shortage, among others, in transport. We need to make sure that that it's easier to attract third country national in Europe. We have nothing against third country national. Of course, they are welcome to come work in Europe, but they need to come to work in Europe at European conditions. We can't accept any more slavery. We can't tolerate any more double standards or triple standards on our labor market. And then another point that is not necessarily connected to or directly connected to labor, but that influences the quality of labor, is about governance. We had a series of discussions with our members and with some experts in the field recently about foreign direct investment in transport, with a special focus on China. And it is clear that Europe is not always shaping its agenda, that we are sometimes reacting to agendas or to plans that are prompted from the outside. And it's clear that as European actor, we ask that this is changed. And of course, if we intend politics as a way to improve people's life, as a way to make sure that we change for the good of the society and for the good of citizens, then we need to make plans that also includes transport, that are not based on boosting competition, but that are based on how to better serve the public interest. We are facing the consolidation of transport companies. We are seeing there are companies, especially, not only, but especially in logistics that are, and in shipping, that are expanding, that are generating vertical integration, and that are in some cases more powerful from a political and economic point of view than some national governments. We need to make sure that these processes are governed, because otherwise they are totally out of control of public hands. As I said, public policies on transport push for competition and liberalization of the last 30 years. This has pushed price down. That was the objective. Now, the question is, was this a good choice? I'm not sure. Transport has a price. This price is not always being paid. And now we see the consequences on labor, because workers are at the bottom of the whole pyramid, and they are those who are paying the price. So let's make the users pay the right price for transport, and let's use European policies to do this. As I said, the next few months will be crucial for shaping the future agenda. There is so much that is in your hands. At the moment, there are a lot of pieces of legislation that are up for revision. There are service regulation, train driver directive, bus and coach, consortia block exemption regulation, and so on. Again, there are European elections, and transport workers are voters. I'm not sure how impressive. We are very clear about this. We want to make sure that our members are going to vote at the European election, and that our members are not going to vote for extreme right-wing parties, because and we believe that we all believe in democracy here, and we all should strive for it. So we have gathered today the most crucial policymakers, those who have a lot of power in their hands for deciding where Europe will go in the future. And we have a few questions for them. And we would like to have a very honest and open discussion, also quite informal discussion, in fact. So my first question, and I would like to start with Commissioner Vălean. If you had to pick up 3 priorities to address the current problems in transport, which we have just mentioned, what would these 3 priorities be?
Well, thank you for the question, but to be honest, you launched in the air so many ideas, and I must say, I agree with I don't. But as an introduction, I want to say that the debate about the workforce in transport, it's very good and very useful. We, during my mandate as commissioner, but I'm absolutely sure that previous to that also, we discussed a lot about the sustainability and decarbonization of transport. Even with you, the topics all in discussion with you were about decarbonization and policies towards that. So now, since the Commission proposed, I would say, a quite exhaustive package on sustainability and decarbonization, we can refocus on some structural issues, as you are naming them. I agree with you. One of them being the shortage of workers in transport, and overall the condition of these jobs. And this is very important because, as you were pointing out, and I'm very aware of this, and it's a subject I'm raising all the time inside the Commission, the fact that we have a shortage in all sectors of transport, it's really dramatic, and this is going to become worse. That means that this conversation I should have had with the employers, which I'm having also, because the main issue is for the employers themselves, how they will succeed in a competition for the workforce, qualified workforce, against other sectors of economy. And this is indeed an issue. You said priorities. Yeah, so this is a priority, how we manage to attract more people to the jobs in transport. And this is indeed an issue. Nothing will beat good conditions of work and good salary. So if you have good conditions of work, you have good salaries, you can bet that you can find people to work for you. If you don't have any of these two, then it will be difficult and we talk for nothing. So this is something I'm telling to the employers. If you want to have qualified people to work for you, you have to compete, give them good salaries and good work conditions. Then we have the skills issue. Because now we discuss more and more about automation, digitalization, so on and so forth. So times are changing. We need people who can convert or improve their skills to adapt to the new conditions, to the modernization of the sector. In all areas, be it from aviation to rail or to trucks or ships and so on and so forth, you will see more and more new skills to be needed. So what we can do together, you, us as politicians, as also employers, is to make sure that we have very solid programs for training and making sure that people get the needed skills to be able to do high quality jobs. Thirdly, having all this in place, still you need to have a competitive and solid economic sector. Because if the sector is not solid, it's not profitable, it's not making money, then you'll have unsatisfied customers, poor workforce, all the bad things. But for this, we have to maintain the competitiveness of our transport sector on a global scene. I'm satisfied with the competition inside Europe. I think we have all the tools in place, the market is well functioning, but what about the competitiveness with outside world? Are our measures, our policies right to support the sector to maintain its competitiveness? So this is a question we have to answer, all of us, the industry and the politicians alike. So I gave you 3.
I'm sure that there are different opinions around the table because you have expressed some very important principles about salaries, good conditions, and so on. Now, the problem is some employers are saying we have too much pressure, competition. If you see what's happening in ground handling in airports, but not only, we can't pay more than this. Our margins are very tiny. So, Frank, what's the perspective of the workers there? And what are the priorities of the workers?
If you ask me, for priorities for the sector, it would be the workers. If we have to do one thing, that is put people again in the center of our industry. And people in the center of our industry, that would be the people who work in the industry and the people who use the industry, the customers and the people who use public transport, for example. So we must recenter, reshuffle our industry, in my opinion, making people the key of our industry, not profits, not competition, not whatever. We should try to reflect from the people who work in it and the people who use it. That would be my general answer to this. If you ask my three priorities, as you did in your opening question, I could make it very easy saying control, control, and control, because the first one is there is an enforcement problem in our sector. You knew that, for example, we, the trade unions, we went for a mobility package. We asked for a mobility package. We did discuss a lot with Parliament, Commission, and we came to a quite good solution of a package in the mobility. We think that it could be helpful to fight social dumping. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is, do we control what we have as legislation? Before the mobility package, we had problems. We had also legislation then, but we had no control. So we had a problem. And now we have the mobility package, we have again a problem, because a lack of control. Let me give you one very concrete example. In my country, in Belgium, the second largest transport company was caught by inspection services and police organizing social dumping and even organizing human trafficking. And there was a whole discussion that it could come to a process, but they took an arrangement with the company. 200,000 euro of punishment, of a fine that has to be paid. And yes, the CEO had a prison charge, but it was on probation. So it's a very bad example about lack of control and lack of enforcement. And it might open some people to say, yeah, why should we follow these rulings in the mobility package if there is no control and if there is not enough enforcement? That is one thing. The second priority would be for me precarity of jobs. We have to do something about precarity of jobs. And it is true what the commissioner came to say. If you have a priority, if you have a problem with a lack of staff, it's also because the jobs that we have are not well-paid jobs or precarious jobs. My union, for example, looked in logistics in the e-commerce sector. We saw a lot of big problems of issues in PostNL, in GLS, where exploitation of workers was really so obvious. Even child labor was constated. So we have a problem there of precarity and of jobs that have not the right quality. So that would be a second one. And then maybe also talk about minimum wage. We had a big discussion in Europe about a minimum wage. And of course, in that discussion, they said, you don't want one minimum wage for all over Europe. Not, of course, we did not want that as unions. What did we want? We wanted that people who work somewhere in the European Union is paid a salary that can afford him a good living or her a good living. And that's what we worked for, and we can realize that by good CBAs. Is it a silly question that we ask for that everybody who works, for example, in Belgium, has a minimum wage that assure him or her to have a good living? Also, people coming from abroad, third country residents working in Europe. First, we should create good jobs that people in Europe who have no work actually, there is still a lot of unemployment, should make the step to our industry because it's attractive enough. The salary is good enough and the working conditions are good enough. But even then, if it's not enough, and if it's still there is a shortage of workers, and we have to step to third country people coming in, even then they have to be paid the normal wages in the country where they operate, the minimum wage in the country they operate. So that would be my answer on your first question. 3 priorities. Let's talk about control and enforcement. Let's talk about the precarity of jobs, and let's talk about decent wages and minimum wage for the people working in the industry.
Mr. Marinescu, your 3 priorities in these respects.
So
You need to put your mic
thank
on.
you for invitation, first of all. So when I hear about exploitation, it reminds me 40 years ago in communist time when we were speaking about exploitation of the capitalism. So I am not so happy to hear about this kind of things. There are, of course, examples, but I don't think that you may have a general view. So my priorities would be education, harmonization of the rules for a profession that will provide certification, European one. So one, I don't know what, one profession could, one worker in a profession could work everywhere in Europe because it has the same certification, same rules. I want liberalization. You spoke about mobility package, you made a mistake. So mobility package is true, took a lot of things, especially protectionism. If you are speaking about transport, road transport. So liberalization, because if you think that return of the truck, it's a very good rule, I think that we have totally different opinions. And also harmonization of the work rules, because in this way, again, people can go around and harmonization of the work rules all over Europe, which is not a, this is not a common rule for EU. But I think that this will make easier for a worker to find a job. Now, you are speaking about lack of workers, and your answer is from the unions side. What is the answer? Because looking a little bit from outside, you can say they don't want to work. So that's the situation. When you see that, when you see that there are a lot of requests for jobs, and there are not people to fill these requests, you can have, or you don't have specialists in that for that request, you can have also this answer. So I would like also to have your answer. Don't give me the salary and the conditions, because this is, of course, should be, but other reason why it's a lack of workers.
I'm moderating, so I think our president has given you an answer. But I think if we have to look at data. We don't have to look at this with an emotional way. And I don't think that people don't work with because they are lazy. There is a tight labor that shows that people that are in working age in Europe is decreasing. So every sector has problems with shortage. And if we look at transport, almost every sector in transport has a problem of shortage. You talk about education, but we will talk about this in the second question. Why should I want to train in a sector that is not guaranteeing me a future where I have precarious working conditions? So yes, salary, decent salary, and working conditions, because transport workers are not becoming rich with their job, that's clear, but decent salary that allows me to arrive at the end of the month to feed my kids and to pay for my expenses, and predictable working conditions are very important. And if I have to go and work at the airport and I need a car and I need to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I can have a better salary and more stable job in a supermarket, I certainly choose the supermarket. I'm sorry. So
That's the market.
Well, but
Work market.
But if we want to fly, we still need people to handle our luggage. But I'm taking a role that is not mine at the moment. So I would like to move to Mrs. Contura, but it's a very interesting debate.
Well, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank European Transport Workers Federation for organizing today's event and for the great work that they do advocating and fighting for the rights of transport workers. It's true that transport is changing fast, and it's true that it's the time now that we have to speak about. And from my point of view, we need to be discussing about two things together: the transport that needs to be fair to the environment, but at the same time to its workers. I will totally agree what was said before, that the core of our politics should be the humans, should be the people. Because if we have to be honest, the soul of transport is not the engines or the wheels, but or the vehicles, but the people. And it's very important, if we want to put priorities, to just stress out that liberalization is an issue. And why is an issue? Because unfortunately, in the transport sector, we cannot protect the citizens from the rising the cost, and at the same time, at the workers of diminishing the salaries. Now, the three priorities I would say is improve the working environment, because this work, it's already very difficult by its nature, and we should not forget that it's long periods away from home, many hours on the wheel or aboard a ship. However, there are many ways we can improve the lives of transport workers, and such as is decent infrastructure for drivers. We have to think that they need we need also to protect the women, that they're more vulnerable, so they will choose this profession if they know that they don't lack safe and secure. Also for all the workers, resting areas, which is very important as well. Social protection, we should not forget the parents and their families, especially when one of the parents is away for a long time for work. Improve of a work-life balance, and making the transport sector fit for women. For me, I think it's very important to make sure that we will support the ETF proposals, that their mainstream a gender-responsive approach into EU transport policy, strengthen social dialogue and eliminate discrimination and unequal treatment, improve work-life balance, improve women's health and safety at work, and violence and harassment against women at work. The second priority should be higher salaries. Transport workers have been asking for higher salaries for a very, very long time, and the sacrifice that they make and they have to do with this work is very important, and they deserve really high salaries, especially at the time when inflation and cost of life is skyrocketing, and we have to make sure that the profits of transport companies support first and foremost the salaries of the workers. Profits of transport companies support first and foremost the salaries of the workers. Now we know that we had a lot of issues, because with the human resources after especially COVID-19, which they left, the big resigned as they call it, and they hesitate to go back to the same work, to the transport. And this is a very serious case. So we've seen in the airports last summer the problems that were created, and the whole sector serious case. So we've seen in the airports last summer the problems that were created, and the whole sector of tourism as well was bothered. The third thing is safety at work. Transport work, I think, is a dangerous profession, and we must ensure the safety of the workers as much as possible. For all transport modes, we need action plans to quickly adapt, also with the technological developments, and make sure transport workers that will enjoy the highest protection possible, especially for women. And as I have mentioned before, we need to improve health and safety at work, and also violence, harassment, which is present because of dominant culture and masculinity in the sector. And the special attention has to be given to the driving time, because tired drivers, they're very dangerous in the roads, and they can cause really big accidents, not only for themselves, but also to passengers and other transport users.
Thank you very much. I think this last point is one of our highlights in our campaign about road safety, and we would like this to be included in the standards that are being developed to improve road safety. Last but not least, Petar Vitanov.
Thank you. Very short, because most of the things were already said. But Maria and I also live behind the Iron Curtain, and I must confess that exploitation of the capitalism is not a communist propaganda, and I see it now. I see exploitation of workers. You can see it easily, because when we have competitiveness, and number one is competitiveness, and you cannot save from fuel, from the price of the fuel. You cannot save from the price of the bus or aircraft. You save from the labor, unfortunately, and it's caused a lot of problems. And we have unacceptable situation in 21st century in the European countries. So when we speak about those priorities, I would say, maybe I have to repeat most of the colleagues, but of course, working condition, increasing salaries, and also improving the public image. And I can speak more broadly about it, but most of the things were already said. Maybe just to mention the access to the market in order to make the profession more attractive. We need also to improve the access, especially for young people. So we have a similar meeting several months ago when we spoke about the lack of access for young people for the truck drivers, for instance, because you are able to operate an aircraft at the age of 18, but you are not able to drive trucks until 21. So this is
proposing something like that.
Yeah. So, okay.
It's
wonderful.
coming immediately.
Yeah. So it is also, and also probably sometimes the lack of access is not because of the age, but because of the financial issues. Also because some colleagues mentioned that in Sweden, to get a license for truck driver, it costs almost 15,000 euros. So it's a problem, especially for young people. So I would say the access, of course, improving the public image, and most importantly, improving the working condition and increasing the salaries.
Yeah, the question was on the table. What do we want? And when I hear that we have to go for more liberalization, and when I hear that, for example, the package was just about protectionism, I want to react, and I want to react because I think it's not normal that we discover 500 Filipino drivers in a camp in Denmark, that our union there discovers these people with a bad salary, with bad working conditions, living in circumstances that are totally unacceptable. That motivates us to go for a mobility package, to regulate and to protect these people. When we see that in the shipping industry, P&O, sex, just like that, with a video message, 800 workers that are working on the ships between Great Britain and Europe, they put them without work just by a video message. And when the ships arrive at destiny and the people who work on these ships that are sacked go out of the ship, they are replaced by cheap labor. I think this is not the good way to organize the transport industry, and that we should not accept these kind of things. So for us it is important that we try to regulate. And this means not that we must regulate it in a silly way with silly rulings that are just bureaucratic or whatever. No, it must be efficient. We must have the means to control and to combat these kinds of situations that are endeavor. No, it must be efficient. We must have the means to control and to combat these kinds of situations that are, in fact, unacceptable in these years. And if we can clean up our sector by doing so, I think we will have an answer on the lack of staff, because our union is active in schools. Our union tries to speak with young people. And a lot of young people know we will not go to work in the transport sector because what we hear about the transport sector is bad. So we want to bring another message saying, yeah, you should go to work in the transport sector. But we need a better situation, working conditions for these workers to motivate people to make the step towards the sector. And I think that if we don't realize that there is a real problem in the industry and that we have to do something about it, we will for a long time have a lack of workers. You spoke about women in the transport industry. Why do women not come enough to our industry? Why are we still a male industry? Because of violence towards the staff. Because of women not feeling protected when they are bus drivers or when they work in the rail. There is a lot of aggression towards these stuff. So we have to work on this. We have to try to make it better and to create in that way also a completely different image of the working in the industry. And then people will be motivated. And let's talk also about prices. I think that the price for transport is not the real price. Is it normal that I can go to Zaventem now and fly to Madrid for €22? I think it's not normal.
Train is more expensive.
It's not normal.
It's not normal that the train is too expensive.
Yeah,
Exactly, but this is the situation.
Yeah, but even then,
motivation.
the train has to be paid, and the transport by flying has to be paid.
So the discussion is becoming very heated, and this is not because it's a very important subject. And this leads me, what Frank is saying leads me to the discussion about modal shift. The Commission has been trying to promote modal shift for 30 years maybe, but it didn't succeed yet. Why and how can we change the situation now?
I think the topics raised here are more important for the workers in transport and for the potential workers in transport than modal shift. So,
but modal shift is connected to work.
No.
Very
Modal
much.
shift is connected. We're working on this, and I can react on modal shift. But Frank was saying that we need regulation to make sure that there is not abuse. There are not abuse of workers in transport, and you are right. But we have regulation, Ismail. We have mob pack. We have posting of workers. You would say it's not, maybe the checks are not right, but they caught it in Belgium during a check from the European Labour Agency, which is newly established, but it has very high on the agenda exactly to check how mobile pack is applied. We have these new tachographs, whatever. So in terms of regulation, I would say we are sort of covered. Implementation and indeed control is very important, and this is something we have to continue to ask governments and agencies in charge with that to make sure that the regulation is applied. Then there were some other things very important said here. And for road, for example, to attract young people, we are indeed considering that we have to catch them at an early age. So the Commission is going to propose some changes in the driving license regulation so that we will try to facilitate the access of young people to the profession and to modernize well. This is recognized as such. Now, multimodal. What do you want to use multimodal? Are you sure you want multimodal? Are you sure you want multimodal?
I think the debate on a modal shift is very much connected to the question of labor in transport, because it's about also price, right? And so price depends very much on how you can use or how you want to use labor in the transport sector.
You are right. I think the Commission with the package fit for 55 has done a lot. Of course, this has to come into force, to be adopted, to come into force on us, because then you will see a lot of measures taken to internalize the externalities. So you will see that actually it is put a price on less sustainable modes of transportation, but don't get me wrong, I think all are equally essential for our economy. So I'm not going against one transport mode or another. I think all they need to decarbonize. They all need to maintain high standards of work conditions, because this is our topic today. But indeed, if you look, emission trading scheme included for road now. If you have, taxation on fuels in aviation, if you have all the measures, electrifications, AFIR, so on and so forth, refuel, everything shows a willingness and a direction for the modal shift.
But
there are others to come, for example, we need to look again at the combined transport directive to revise it, because there are some fine tuning to do to make there. And of course, we have to continue to improve the attractiveness of rail in comparison with other modes, and for this, rail has to open its data. We have to have real-time information about rail services, for the people to be able to choose rail, for the companies to be able to follow their merchandise on rail transportation, to make it more attractive for businesses and for people to be used. We have also the count emissions, which is going to put a methodology in place on how you can count emissions in a particular transport operation, and this can also be voluntarily then offered, so people can make a real choice if they prefer to have the cheapest, the fastest, or the less emitting the service of transportation possible. So I think this is bringing a lot of change in the system.
But if we can internalize externalities in terms of environmental costs, so if we can make the polluters pay, can we also internalize that it should also be possible to internalize social costs, so labor costs, so making the sectors paying for the real cost of labor? Mr. Marinescu.
Yeah, I shall answer you also for this. So again, as I said before, exploitation, maybe there are examples of such a thing. That's very clear. There is nothing perfect. No area, no action, no people. Nothing is perfect. There are bad things happening. Exploitation, I know, farms in Sicily or agriculture in Spain or some other things, yeah? Or some examples in transport, like your example. But do you think that that exploitation was done following the rules? No. They didn't respect the rules, which means that the authorities that are enabled to do this, they have to act. Rules should not be done for the, 5%, 10%, 15% of bad behavior in any area. Rules must be done for a normal activity, good people, and bad activities, not normal exploitation, must be punished. That's it. That's very simple for me. Now you are asking me to make rules because of those 10% bad. This was the communism. They were saying there are some that are fighting against. So stop your rights, stop your freedom. This was because they were acting against all the people with the argument that there are some that are not good people. So we cannot do such a thing. It's not normal. Yes, liberalization. Do you know that 80% of trains in Germany are PSO? Even ICE? Do you think that this is normal? No, liberalization is true. Yes, mobility package is for protecting the Western market. It's clear. Now you realize that the problem in the Western market was not that people from Romania or Bulgaria or Poland were coming and working following the service directive. So a rule. No, the problem is that you don't have drivers. This was the problem everywhere, in France, in Sweden, and so on. Your example, yes, it's a bad example, but the authorities should act. How those 500 people arrived there? Following some rules? I don't think so. So this is my philosophy. And your question. This was my life. I worked to pay salaries to 100 people in communism because I was obliged to show that these people will do something, even if we were in communism, and in capitalism, let's say, after 90. So I did this. I know how it is. To have 100 people responsibility to give them a good salary. For this, you have to find work. Of course, you have to put in the social cost, in the cost of your company, the social cost, which means labor. It's clear. But you have to have an income, so activity, to sell something. To sell something, you need good people. You cannot work in a company without people. You can be the best, intelligent, Nobel Prize manager. If you don't have good people, good workers, the company is it's zero. Clear. But in the same time, you have to find a balance between what you can do with those people, what you sell, the work done by those people, and the salaries that are going back. That's very simple. It's not a big philosophy. Of course, everybody wants a good salary. And you say that the ladies are not going in for me, women are ladies, are not going in transport. Of course, because most of the work in transport is not, this is my personal opinion, for ladies. I don't want to see ladies throwing the luggage in the ground handling in the airport. I would not like to see it, because it is not a woman work. There is not a lot of work in offices.
I think
Drive a train, yes, a tram, and you know very well, yes, in our country.
I could see the body language of our guest, and I see that
So thank you
not
very
many
much.
people agree with your statement about women not being able to work in transport.
Not
And
be able, no,
let me
please,
strongly disagree with this.
Don't be member
but,
of the unions.
That's what I am.
I didn't say that are not able. I would not like to see a lady doing hard work. To be more clear, did you understand me? So
I think
she can work in an office. She can drive a train or a bus or a tram. Yeah, that could be done, but not all of it.
But wouldn't it be a
And do you think that there are ladies driving a truck? Do you think that it's a very good drive?
Sure.
The truck is automized.
Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, but maybe it would be a good idea that we try to organize labor that everybody can do the labor. You speak about ladies not being fit for doing the work of a handler
I think
at
it's
the airport.
biological. I think this
Yeah.
is what he's trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, but
Not
the problem.
biologically, it's
Yeah, but the problem is not that the ladies can't do the work. The problem is that this kind of work is bad for ladies and for men. Because I work with handlers, I know what handlers do. Also, men, at 45, 50 years, knees are broken, elbows are done, and they have problems with their health. So let's try to organize the work in another way with the machines that are there, but maybe
Automate everything.
but it could be much more ergonomic. Maybe let's make some regulation about the weight of the luggage. Why do we accept that these people have to carry luggage of 35 kilo or 40 kilo, 35 kilo? A handler at the airport, he takes 5 ton a day, 5 ton a day in his hands. So let's organize it in another way.
You agree with me
That ladies and men can do the job, both of them, in an easy way.
Yeah.
And I could give examples of other jobs in the transport industry. Let's organize it differently, and then we will have women working in the industry.
so. Let's move. I think we went with this discussion. Allow me to say we went back 40 years in time. So I would like to move to the future rather, and I see a lot of women working in transport. If we change the transport sector, it's not a matter of women or men. It's a matter of making the sector a decent one for the people who work in it, European or non-European, wherever they come from. And I hope that we will all agree that the discussion should be about how we can make it a better sector to work for everyone. We were talking about modal shift, and this is also connected, as I said, to internalizing also social cost. How do you see this in the future to be tackled also at European level?
Yeah, I will answer, in a second, but speaking about the exploitation again, I'm sorry, but we don't need to change the rules for those terms, and we just need to close the loopholes. Because Philip may say what is behind the €10 price for one-way ticket with a plane from Madrid to anywhere else in Europe.
I can tell you,
there is a
not
price.
lose time now.
And to be honest, I'm not going. Well, okay, but
You take
because
an
atypical.
You are taking not a good example. €10 or €15 is the 6 months period when they put on the market a new flight, and he can tell you this. After that, you will pay 200 and 300. So that's the reality.
Okay, and but yeah, because atypical form of employment might be not forbidden, but is used, I would say, improperly, and that's what we have to close because it creates a lot of problems to me. But speaking about modal shift, yeah, there are several, I would say, different reasons. In order to have fully achieved less carbon-intensive transport modes, and to me, the potential for the modal shift is higher when transport demand is more concentrated. And for passengers, for instance, this is the urban areas. So multimodal connectivity is at the highest for freight. Urban areas, particularly the largest agglomerations, are where the modal shifts is, I would say, more achievable. Many measures potentially contribute to the modal shift in urban areas, including the provision of infrastructure for alternative modes, the implementation of shared mobility, vehicle access restrictions, and the integration of ticketing, and so on and so forth. But I think that we are, I would say, on the right path of achieving more and more in terms of modal shift. Because in the end, we do have a really ambitious regulations which are part of Fit for 55 package, CO2 standards for cars and vans, AFIR refuel, maritime refuel, aviation, and so on and so forth. So I think that we are going on the right path. Package, CO2 standards for cars and vans, AFIR refuel, maritime refuel, aviation, and so on and so forth. So I think that we are going on the right path on that.
Well, for the model shift to happen, I think there are a few key points that we must prioritize. First, the convenience. It must be convenient to change from one mode to another. The multimodal payment and ticketing system must become more and more, I think, popular, enabling access to more updated and reliable informations and public transport services, especially in urban areas. This is very important in cities, especially where there is a very high use of private cars for short distances. Rail definitely is the most sustainable means of transport, and when we talk about modal shift, it is the mode that we desire, but there are also significant barriers on that. For example, the lack of cross-border interoperability and sufficient network in some countries, the complexity of transport chains, which is a particular challenge for multimodal chains, slow implementation, and very high cost of the measures needed to deliver a single European rail transport network. Second thing, the price. Prices, it's a driving factor when it comes to modal choice. We need to make sure that the most sustainable modes are subsidized. It is not enough to achieve a level playing field by ensuring that all modes of transport pay their full external cost. Taxation plays a very important role. The way in which different modes are taxed differs between modes and across member states. For example, the tax exemption on kerosene for short haul flights that do not allow trains to become competitive, and at the same time company cars and the fuel that they use have a favorable tax treatment in many countries. The third is investments. For model shift to happen, we need huge, I think, public and private investments. We need to modernize the public transport system, and it's imperative that everywhere in Europe there are efficient, reliable, and affordable public transport systems making full use of the latest technological developments in planning a journey, in ticketing, and the safety. Regarding freight, we need to strengthen support to investment in multimodal technicals. It must be fast and cheap to move from one mode to the other. In the same sense, we must support and consistent development of information sharing in freight transport. Electronic information in transport is key for different reasons, informing about the services available, about the terminals and the logistics platforms in terms of their accessibility, availability, facilities, service offered, performance, etc.
And this leads me to the last question, and then after this I would like to have a very small conclusive remark for everyone. over the last months, we have seen a lot of experiments in Germany, in Spain, and in other countries about trying to attract people to public transport. So by offering free public transport or low fares for citizens, this is linked to the concept of transport poverty. Many people don't have access to decent connectivity and mobility, and this is a right that should be guaranteed to everyone. But trade unions have some doubts about how we should implement these plans, Frank.
But it's all about what you make attractive and what you don't make attractive, and what you stimulate and what you don't stimulate. If you speak about the examples that you gave in public transport, I can talk about myself. I have to go from the place where I live in Ghent very regularly every day, or to Antwerp or to Brussels. And I had a choice. I take the train and the bus, or I take my car. You have to organize it that way that my train and bus is more attractive for me than taking my car. If I don't have on regular times a bus and a train going to the place I want to be, if it's not cheap enough or cheaper than taking my car, well, I take the car. That's simple as it is. So for me, we should organize our public transport in such a way that is an attractive one to take. That means that you have to have a lot of trains and buses going around, also at late hours and early hours. You know, the handler at the airport, he can't go to his work with the train or the bus. He has to take the car, because of why? There is no train to the airport when his shift is starting. So that is what we have to do, and that means that you have to mobilize money for that. It has to be paid, and this means that you need public investment in public transport, and that you mobilize a lot of money in organizing it that way that people find it attractive enough to let the car at home and to take this public transport. It's a very simple approach that we need to have in our head, and that we also have to ask to governments, to politicians, invest in this public transport, assuring that people are motivated by itself, because it's the most attractive way to go from one place to another and to step on that train or that bus. And that means also that you have a lot of people working in this industry, and that you have to pay these people as it should be done, and that you have to attract them to go to that activity. We talked about it earlier. If you want to have motivated train drivers, to have motivated people at the wheel of the bus, we have to pay them properly, and we have to organize working conditions that are good working conditions. So it will create a whole fuzz, a positive environment to motivate people to go on public transport.
So I think if we want to have more affordable public transport for everyone, we need to have public resources there. Commissioner, what is the lesson that you learned from these experiments that were done, and how would you see this addressed also from a European perspective?
Well, I don't see a need for public money, basically, on many things which have a commercial angle. So you don't have to ask me about that, because I saw also from the liberalization of services and access on the market with competition of various players, that this increased the offer, decreased the price, created jobs. So we have seen in many places in Europe how liberalization in rail actually came with an added value for the services offered and for the decrease of price.
But are we talking about regional lines, or are we talking about high-speed trains? Because these are also two different markets.
Yes. Then, for urban mobility, we have proposed with our urban mobility strategy for cities to develop plans. And at the center of the mobility plans in a city, it's obvious that the public transportation and the sharing of transport should be in the center. So this indeed, how is this organized by one city or another? This is subsidiarity, and we will have more satisfied citizens in some cities and less satisfied citizens in other cities. There is, of course, the possibility of public service obligation. So there, indeed, where there is no commercial case and it's of public importance, the state can come in and subsidize a service. So this I understand. But we have to see, first and foremost, to have a good plan for this, and then ask the citizens what they want. If I totally believe that the authorities are acting in the interest and on behalf of the citizens. So if it's more appropriate to use a public transportation in a specific area, the authorities will deliver on it. If in other parts, I don't know, the private operators will step in because it's profitable, then we will do so. In Belgium, the trains, this is state-owned. Sorry. So this is state-owned. So it's an example of the public authorities not only managing a service. If you say it should be different, it should be more services at different hours, so on and so forth. I would say that more competition would help the customers, but it's not up to me to say something for the Belgian people, who they vote and what they do. So yes, indeed, we are making requirements for urban nodes, also for electric vehicles. We are trying to make more sustainable the mobility in cities. And in the end, everyone chooses how is best to deliver what the citizens are waiting for.
I'm not sure if we are able to name many examples of public transport that was privatized and that was more efficient and cheaper, but we will maybe keep this for the debate later when we will discuss over a cup of coffee.
Public, it's the tricky word in this name, public transport. I'm just saying, if you have private operators offering services, and this is something different, it's not on public. Well, public is public.
And we are welcoming also Mr. Kaf, who just joined us from his meeting at the Parliament. We were just welcome, and we were just talking about something that I know interests you very much, because we already had conversations about this, and it's about how to make public transport more attractive, affordable, but also in a way that it is properly staffed and properly resourced. So maybe you may have also your view on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone, and apologies for being late. I had a shadows meeting over in the European Parliament. I think, to me, the challenge in public transport is to improve the affordability, number one, to improve the conditions for workers, and to improve the reliability, and to give the users of that service what they need. I know from my own country and my own city of Dublin, we've improved the quality of the buses themselves, everything from more comfortable seats to free Wi-Fi on board and free charging for your device. So we're giving the end user a good service. I think the conditions for workers have improved significantly in recent years. We've changed the routes around, and we're going to do an awful lot more to ensure that public transport gets the priority it deserves within our urban areas, by providing both bus lanes, bus priority at traffic signals, and significant improvements to make it easier for the 80 people that fit in one vehicle to get to where they want to go, ahead of the car where the average occupancy is 1.4 people. So all of these, I think, can combine to improve the service. We do have competition in bus provision is certainly in Dublin and in some other cities, but the vast majority of public transport of our bus service is provided by a state-owned transport company, but there is maybe 10, 15, 20% of the public transport service is provided by the private sector. My view certainly is if the state or the city can provide a good service, it should be allowed to do so. And that's certainly the way it's worked out in my own city, even though there are some private services. So that to me would epitomise or encapsulate the green view of where we are. Obviously, we look at some cities that have provided free public transport. If they can, that's brilliant. But for us, the peak loading would be too high. So we don't want to have people crammed in like sardines during the morning or the evening peak. And I think if I had the money to provide free public transport, I'd use it for other things, such as increasing the reliability, increasing the network length. And I think these are interesting discussions to have, but it becomes a very polarized sort of radio show. Would you provide it for free? And to me, the answer is more complicated. And I think often with public transport, it's not one simple yes, no answer. There are shades of grey, and we need to explain to people what we want to do to improve the service, not just for the end users, but for the workers themselves. And we are certainly wary of a race to the bottom in terms of workers' rights. And we need to be attentive to that at all times.
So we had a quite lively debate. We had a quite lively debate earlier, and there are very different opinions in the room, as expected, about how the direction that transport should take. But we all agree that there are problems as far as labor in transport is concerned, and that these rules have to be, that these problems have to be tackled. Am I right to say that there is a package of measures, or there is a wide set of measures that we need to take? We talked about working conditions, we talked about attractiveness, we talked about education, we talked about salaries and so on. Am I right to say that for the future what we need is a social pact for transport, and that has to include policymakers, employers, trade unions, and everyone who's in the sector?
Well, since I have to leave, I will try to
final
give you my conclusion here. So we believe that in any other economic activity, first and foremost, you have to have good salaries and good working conditions. If we look at rail, what we can improve and attract more people towards rail is improve the skills, because it will come with more automatization, digitalization, so on and so forth. This might be really very interesting for young people, and also easier for women to go into this job than for cross-border operation, for example, to look at put the train driver in the center of the certification, its license, and not the company but the driver himself. And also make the use of English, for example, for cross-border operations, so more people would have access to operate this kind of things. For road, I think indeed, if we look at lowering the age for at least for the training, so that and also some conditions of for the truck drivers, something we didn't discuss here, but it was raised at some point by Elena, the safety. For example, in our 10T regulation, we put the obligation, which was then taken out by member states, to have secure parking spaces each 100 kilometers on the core network, because you cannot have good conditions for truck drivers if you don't have money in our new generation funds for them, the plans of the countries for parking. We're inviting everyone, please come, and we have money, please invest in secure parking, because not only women, also men have lost their life because they are under attack, and there are very prestigious countries in Europe who do not give a damn and do not invest a dime in secure parkings, and this is unacceptable. So we have to insist on this one, and I know you are on board on this issue. For aviation, we have to make some clear clarification about center of operations, these kind of things. This would make quite change and improving conditions. Absolutely clear. We have the skills for sea. I know you are involved as organization in this program, and this is also very important also for improving the skills and attracting people for the maritime sector. So I think we have to improving the skills and attracting people for the maritime sector. So I think we have to pay attention not at a big picture. We don't need, I don't want to disappoint you. If you want to pack, we can make a pack, but this is big and vague. I think we need to pay attention now to details and try to address issues which might appear small, but in fact would bring a huge difference in improving conditions and increase the attractiveness of the transport sectors.
So we need to finalize the formal part of the discussion, and then we will go upstairs and we will continue the talk because it's very interesting. But
I would like to say something about that.
Sure.
Okay. I would like to raise the issue of the review of regulation of air services. Last September, we sent to the Commissioner, Madame Vălean, 13 members of the Transport Committee from several political groups, asking that the revision proposal to be published as soon as possible, to allow this legislature to fill in some of loopholes that affect the social sustainability of the industry. And actually, we talked about the social standards because it's not enough. We think that definitely the position we are in today is clear. There is not enough time for a full review of the air services agreement regulation, which would include broader issues than social ones, and would not allow for concrete progress in this area. Perhaps then would we think of a more straightforward regulations, which would include, first of all, the social standards, which are very important, the environmental concern, the passengers' rights. But this is something that we think that Madame Vălean should consider, because supposed to come 2020, I think, and now it's postponing for the 2023, but we don't know what is going to happen. So I think it's something that we should say. Yeah, well, we would like to, if it's possible, to come earlier.
thank you very much for this remark. And to conclude, we will have to finish as I said, the formal part of the discussion here. Frank, can we say that at least on some of the issues we agree to disagree, and that there is still a lot of work ahead of us on details, but also on the general policy and on the general idea that we want to have about transport?
I will not go into conclusions because it is true that we agree to disagree on a lot of items, but I will still react on some of the things that were approached just up to now. First, about safe parking areas. There we agree, and absolutely. And as trade unions, we only can say yes, no. Everybody is becoming aware of the problem that we have trucks driving all over Europe, and the facilities for the truck drivers are not there to park their truck in a safe space where they are protected, but also where they have comfort, where they can take a shower, where they can find good food, not rubbish, and where they can pay the food. That's really something that is very important, and we should really invest on this one and go on to develop it, because there are areas where truckers are abandoned and they have to park in bad conditions. So that's nice. We have already this one where we agree on. Where we disagree on, of course, I know that in my country, rail is state-owned. but that's not the problem with rail in my country. The problem is that this state that own rail disinvest in rail, where they should invest in infrastructure, in better infrastructure, in more staff, because they cut in staff, so people have to work harder because they are less to furnish the same services. So I think we have some concrete examples about what privatization in rail did. Look at Great Britain. I don't think that the big privatization goals that was there in Great Britain gave us more security, more protection, and better service to the people. I doubt about it when I hear the British people talking about their rail industry. So I'm not sure that it is about state-owned or not state-owned. I think it's about investment and mobilizing money and invest money in public transport like rail and like urban public transport. I even see cities in France where urban transport was privatized, where the private players stepped in the market, and after several years, the city in question said, "Yeah, well, maybe we have to take it back in our own hands because the service is not what we expected to have." So I think that this is really an issue in the industry. But, and there we agree again, I heard at different times the commissioner saying, we need well-paid, well-protected workers in the industry. Otherwise, we will never make it sustainable. We will never make it an industry that is attractive for people. And there again, we agree. Just one remark on the modal shift. I think as long as we accept that there is a lot of social dumping in the trucking industry, you will never be able to put the containers from the trucks on the rail or in inland navigation because it's too cheap. And if the order giver, a big company who has to transport goods, have to make decisions on how they will organize it, they will go for the most cheapest one. So I think that we really have to clean up the trucking industry to be able to realize a modal shift and putting goods from the trucks to rail and to inland navigation. So I think there is a lot of work to do on this one also.
So I would like to conclude and to thank very much all the speakers that joined us today. I know you're all very busy and it's a busy week in Brussels, so your participation was really appreciated. This is just the beginning of a dialogue, we hope, because I repeat it, I think, for the fourth time. The elections are coming and we need to get ready. There are a lot of challenges ahead of us and we have to take them collectively. In any case, from the ETF side, there is always an open channel and there is always an open the availability to have open conversation. So we are always available for open and sometimes tough discussion.